Okay, after the last dive into the veneer mounting, I'm in the mood for some more veneer work, but not the little bits and pieces. So I'm actually going to do something that's a bit more traditional, which is a bulk sawing, a bulk cutting technique. So I've picked out this set of boxes, and they're all made of poplar or pine, which is an okay wood for painting or that kind of thing, but it's again too dark for pyrography or anything like that, and I don't think it's pretty enough to warrant leaving it as is. So I've been drawing up some designs, playing about with ideas, and I've come up with these flower patterns, which are all based on circles and angles, so that I can actually just cut out three or four of a section and then fit them together as a whole. So that works for the face and the side. So I've done most of the drawing out and maths work and whatever, and I've laid them onto a piece of hardboard. If I had the stuff to do it with, I'd lay it between two pieces of ply. I don't have any ply in the shop at the minute, so I've just laid it on here. That means I might have some tear out on the top, but hopefully with the tape on here it shouldn't be too bad. So the smallest one only needs 3 layers, and the middle and bottom take 4 layers. And this is sycamore. It's the lightest wood I had, and that's going to be ideal for the stages to come. Okay, so the idea with block cutting is that you do the minimum amount of cuts by doing it all in one go. So some tutorials show a stack of 8 or 9 different coloured veneers all being cut in the same image, and then they select out the pieces they want, which seems rather wasteful to me. So I'm going to do one that is all the same wood, and then I'm going to use some other marquetry techniques to actually get the colour into the wood. I'm going to use some sand burning, and I'm going to dye them as well. So yeah, so I've cut these into manageable size sections, and where's my original sketches gone? And if you look at the sketches, they're all based on kind of angles of a circle. So the smallest one here is based on thirds. So I can actually take what is a third or a sixth of this design and just repeat it a number of times. No, a third of a design. Yeah. So I can take a third of the design and just do it in 3 layers. So I don't have to do all the individual cuts. And I've been careful to make sure that these angles, the matching angles, are all the same. So they should fit together perfectly. Should is the word. I've just realised that I cut my design short, so I need this extra shape here to do, so I'll do that first. So I've gone through my little pots of pieces, and I've actually lined them all up on the pattern, just so I know I've got them all and ready to go. I did cut the centre parts for the chrysanthemum and the daisy, but I'm not going to use them in the final boxes. I'm going to do something else. So here I've got my hot plate with a stainless steel pot with some sand in it. This is crafting sand. It's not dyed or coloured in any way. It's just plain sand. You can use building sand if you like. Don't use what they call sharp sand, because that will turn everything orange. So, right, and I've got a long pair of medical tweezers, which will come in quite handy, because this is going to be quite warm. It needs to be around about 200 degrees to burn the wood. So I've done a couple of practice bits on some offcuts. So kind of hold it in for 5-6 seconds and then lift it out and see if you like the colour, and then hold it in for a little longer and see if you like the colour. So that's the basic technique. So you do that until you get to a shade that you like. my last piece here. With the smaller ones you can kind of stack them all into the sand and then take them all out as they come to the right colour. Bear in mind that when you come to sand this, you're going to take off some of that burn. So, finished with this, I'm going to turn it off. And I'm not going to touch it because this is volcanically hot. I've cooked my arm. Never mind. So, I'm going to leave the pieces in my kind of dye mix for at least an hour, probably more. You kind of give them a wiggle every now and again just to make sure everything's underneath, and you use your stirrer to hold things down if they're floating up. And some woods will take this quite nicely, some don't, so you might need to be a bit more generous with time. So yeah, these were the first ones I put in a couple of hours ago and they've only just got some colour on them, so you're going to need a good couple of hours worth of soaking. If you want to speed it up you can add more paint, but do that beforehand, don't add it now, because otherwise you end up with streaky, clumpy, nasty paint everywhere. So yeah, I'm going to let this thing cool down and leave them to sit and steep for a period until I'm happy with the colour. So I'll come back to you for the next bit. Right, I don't know how well this is going to come out. It's fairly dim. So this is my pieces of wood or veneer after 8 hours. So the red has taken it quite well, but the small pieces here were stuck at the bottom where the paint hadn't mixed in. So they're virtually covered in paint. So the purple here, no colour change at all. The blue, same issue. I had most of these haven't got any colour on, the others were sitting at the bottom, so they're quite dark. And the greens, there's a slight shade on the dark green, but the light green is virtually nothing. Yellow, a slight shade, and the white side, then I blobbed on a whole load of the painty water when I took them out, so that might help, maybe not. But I don't know why this didn't work. I think maybe I used the wrong type of wood. I should have used a maple or something, but I don't actually have any enough of that in my stock, which is surprising. So yeah, I'm going to leave these to dry overnight and continue on, and I'm going to have to come in and do some top-up painting, I think. Okay, so next morning, and the idea of putting extra paint on top of these didn't really help. It's just clumpy and evil, so that's going to have to be sanded off, but never mind. So now moving on to actually building the marquetry piece here. So I've got my design taped to the table, and I've put a layer of masking tape sticky side up, and with masking tape you can see through to the design underneath, which is useful. So I'm now placing the parts back in their appropriate places. You can see there is some colour variation going on. There is some colour has worked its way in, but it's not fabulous in any shape or form. So I'm going to have to do some actual painting, I think, which shouldn't be too bad. Using watercolours on this will only soak into the individual pieces. It won't bleed out like it does if you're trying to paint something else. So that should be an easier look. Okay, so I've finished laying out here, and there are some fairly sizable gaps, but I think I can get away with that because I'm using a dark filler on these. Leaving the middle bit unfilled is probably a better idea for a beginner, I think, so no way are these an exact match, but you can see the effect I was going for. If you look through the masking tape you can get some effect, some of the depth of the colour from the burning. So I don't know how well the actual colour is going to come out in the final thing, but we shall see. So now we need to glue it onto the box. So I've kept the box whole for the minute, and I'm going to stick on a nice layer of glue. What I learnt during the last couple of veneer projects is you do not want to over glue. Don't need very much at all. But you need to spread it very, very thin. Probably a bit too thin. I don't want this to ooze up between the pieces of wood, between the veneers. So that means you've got to cut it back before you can put any filler in, and you lose a lot of the effect. So you just want a really thin layer of that. Now I'm going to just invert this and place it directly onto the veneers, lining up. I deliberately overcut slightly so I have got some edges here. And give it a gentle press. It's looking nice and solid. Now I need to find my board, which is over there somewhere. So I've got my tape covered board sticking on top like that. And I'm going to push this to the back corner of my desk here and stick my tin of varnish on top. So that should evenly weigh down the veneers until they stick. With Gorilla Glue it's not going to take very long. Traditionally you use hide glue, but I can't seem to get hold of that, so Gorilla Glue it is. So then it's on to the next one. Okay, so I'm moving on to doing the sides. So what I've done, I've laid out enough masking tape for the height of my box and enough for the width of my box, plus a little bit for handling. And what I've done is I've gone with my repeated pattern here and I've just measured and marked out the repeat, and I've taken out the last 3 pieces on the end of this pattern here, so these 3 pieces, so that when I put it onto the box I've got those ones to add, and therefore I can adjust it as required. Okay, so I've finished laying out most of the veneer. I've got these last couple of pieces that I'll add separately so they can fit on properly. So I've taken off the hinge and the clasp that was on here originally. So I'm just putting a couple of bits of double-sided just to hold it in place. Doesn't really matter which way around it goes, but I'll line up the old marks anyway. So there's that. And here's my veneer. So what I'm going to do, before I even get any glue out, is line up an edge here and just roll it onto the masking tape. Took a lot of that off as it was excess, but so I'm just going to get a starting point like that. Ooh. And just to double check the size, although it's not tight, that fits okay with decent sized gap there for the other ones to go in. And what we're going to do here, just at this joining point, is stick a strip of masking tape just to pin it in place. Okay, so these are sat for a couple of hours now, so I'm going to start unwrapping. Just on a quick inspection, I've noticed that a couple of the petals here haven't stuck down, so I'm going to have to deal with those later. But it looks like all the rest are okay. So, here goes. So I'm in the process of splitting these. What I've done is I've put a line of tape either side of where the crack is, because you can see that in the gaps between the veneers. And this should be the last time you use any tape on this project. And I'm just easing the blade around. I've already scored through the veneer, so I'm just kind of breaking any glue that's got through and the tape where I can find it. I should have probably put a mark on the bottom to indicate where I put the tape, but I didn't think of that at the time. Okay, so after the initial sticking and sanding, pretty much all of the stain that I tried to apply has come off. So I'm going for a slightly more extreme option, and I've literally painted them in just neat acrylics, and I've added in shadows because the burning again disappeared when I sanded. So I've given them all a fairly awful paint job, and then I'm going to sand this back, so hopefully this will create the stain that I was looking for, so that I can then just top up little bits rather than having to do whole blocks again. So it looks awful now. Hopefully it will level out after some more sanding. The kind of final painting stage, really. Well, not final, there's another stage after this, but for the daisy and the starflower, I've used a lot of acrylic. I've blobbed it in at the top and then kind of drawn it down the sides, so you've got a thicker outside to the petal, and then as it comes down you can actually see the colours underneath. So that's a nice effect. It kind of goes against the rules of painting, because you're trying to avoid leaving thick paint, but that way it adds some kind of dimension to it. So I'm now starting to work around the sides, and for all of these, except obviously the flower, I'm keeping it as thin as possible. I'm not watering it down a lot, just starting with a wet brush and using this acrylic, which is the cheaper acrylic, is already quite thin to start with, so that when it goes on it's still very transparent, so you're seeing the other colours underneath and the wood itself, so it actually shows the grains there as well. Okay, so I've brought that as close as I can. Hopefully you'll be able to make out what I'm doing here. So starting with a fair bit of paint on the brush and dabbing a big blob on the very top of the petal, then drawing it down, and as I come down I'm twisting the brush, and that's leaving a line along the edge of the petal here, and then come up and do the same in the other direction, and then just bring the rest down to fill in, so you end up with a thin layer at the bottom of the petal, which allows all the shading to come through, and then the very edge has got this vibrant highlight. And the dog hair. He's not in here, but he finds his way everywhere. Right. So yeah, smooth out the edge and try and get rid of your brush marks as much as possible, like that. So I don't know how well that's come out on camera, but we shall see when I start editing. So I'm going to do that all the way around, and I'm probably going to just add some little extra bits of highlights as well, just to finish these off. Okay, so I've done the last bit of tonal painting on this. I could very well keep going, keep adding layers and layers, and that's just going to be a box that's 95% paint. So I'm going to stop here. I've still got to add a little bit of highlight with some metallic, but then that's the only painting I'm intending to do now. And I've finished the top and bottom except for the metal highlight, and on both of these, the centres, I've driven in a small brass pin to give it a bit of kind of texture. So on the daisy I've got loads and loads of them, so it gives it a bit of a feel. So now I've got to work out, after I've finished the painting and put the metallic layer on, whether or not I'm going to use a spray varnish, a standard varnish or maybe even resin. So that's a decision to be made probably tomorrow. I won't rush into it tonight, I don't think. So yeah, just a little bit of metallic highlights on all of them, and then sticking some pins into the middle of this one, and then I'm done. So in terms of a marquetry project, or a scroll saw project of that, I think I passed on the scroll saw but failed on the marquetry. So I could quite easily have done this without using veneers at all. We just painted them to start with, but there's a nice effect going with the kind of the filler and that, especially with the wax on it. It darkens it down, so it actually makes everything else stand up, lifts everything up. So not a complete fail, but nowhere near where I want it to be. But for the first time using what I believe is called French marquetry, where you do it in a block like that, not too bad. I think if I do this again in future, I might have to invest in some proper wood stain, or use a very light wood like maple, so it would actually take the stain properly. So that would mean actually buying veneer, and with the stack I've still got, I don't want to do that. So yeah, next time I do a project like this, I'm going to have to really think about the things I'm making. I think of the shapes. So I've taken all the fittings and hinges and things off, and they've had a first coat of wax. I'm going to leave them 20 minutes or so and then give them a good buff, and then leave them to one side until we have some decent weather so I can get the resin doing. So that is definitely this project over, at least for now. I'll probably make up the linings for these, but I won't fit them obviously until I've got the finish on. So yeah, not a wasted effort. They came out looking quite nice, but they're not what I was intending. So it's a 50-50 project. Anyone have any suggestions? I'm more than willing to hear them. Anyone with any advice, I'm very much willing to hear that as well. So come back to you next week for the next project, which, oh no it's not, it's chocolates next week.